Hello, a very warm welcome to what we're reading this month. My name is Laura.
And I'm Rebecca.
And this is our virtual book club where we pick non-fiction books, tell you why we picked them and how we can apply them to our work as educators and entrepreneurs. What do we pick to read over December?
We've got two titles this month, Laura. We did The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. And we also did Do Nothing, How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving by Celeste Headlee. So everybody please grab a coffee and find out what we learned and which book is taking pride of place on the shelves.
Indeed. So where shall we start today? Shall we start with Headlee's book? That was the first one I read, although it feels like a long time ago now.
It's the time suck between the holidays. Time loses all meaning, but that's the first one I read as well.
And this was your pick, Rebecca. Why did you choose Headlee's book?
This was actually recommended to me by a coach in one of the entrepreneurial masterminds I participate in. And I thought it might be relevant at this time of year because I often hear that people are trying to resort their priorities and juggle around their life and work schedules to be a little bit better fit at this time of year. So I wanted to give it a try.
Yeah, it was a good pick to have for this time of year. I really appreciated it, and to have this time to read this book with some practical things to take away going into the new year and to form some better habits in how I approach my work. In terms of takeaways, shall I go first?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so there's quite a few bits to take away from this book. I'll just cover a few points that Headlee covers, and that is, well, firstly, she gives a background on our attitudes towards work and how they're shaped by history and Protestant theology. She talks very much about the US context and how productivity is seen as a virtue, but it's not necessarily how we've worked as humans before, which is a really interesting point that she highlights. She then goes on to highlight particular points and how we can do better or do nothing and be more productive. And just to pick a few, there's quite a few in the book itself. It was things like taking more regular and shorter breaks, which I think nobody's going to really be surprised about. That will help to improve your creativity, you'll perform better, and just be generally happier if you schedule regular breaks throughout the day. She talked about the addictive nature of social media and that danger in comparing ourselves to other people and the negative impact that could have. And there were just a few of the things that I took away from this book. How about you, Rebecca?
I agree. The point about social media I thought was really relevant. I am a doom scroller. I do it when I'm anxious. Always, 100% of the time makes me feel worse. So that's something I would really like to stop. And it was nice to be called out on that. I also really appreciated the history. I think in the US, we tend to imagine that we work less than we ever have before. And while our work for many is less physically challenging than it has been before, many people actually put in many more hours than past generations. And it was really interesting for me to see how she developed that historical sort of timeline in the book. The other side of that for me was that I really had to look hard to find practical strategies here. I enjoyed the narrative. I thought the writing was great, but I was looking for some specific, hey, Rebecca, do X, Y, and Z, and you'll get it together. And I did not find that here.
Yeah, when you say that, I actually went back to read this book again before we obviously met today to jog my memory about what's contained within this book, because it does miss those keystone moments that you need to kind of help you connect what you're reading to your context. Of course, we're having this chat today and that helps us and other people perhaps listening to do that, but it's not part of the book. But on reflection, I was able to apply some things, but you do need to push a little bit to make those connections. So I realized actually since reading the book, either subconsciously I've started doing this, or maybe a little bit more consciously, I'm not sure. I've started taking more breaks during my working day and not trying to multitask. Before, I would be maybe just doing an email, just doing a few edits to the website while eating a sandwich. It's basically working at your desk, isn't it? It's not taking a break. So now I'm actually quite purposeful in moving away from my desk or going outside and not feeling guilty for taking time away from my work, whether it's for lunch or for the afternoon break. I've also not felt guilty about not being on social media as much as I could be. I think Instagram is the one social media platform that I'm not very keen on at the moment, because it just seems to be such voluminous content out there. So I'm quite conscious on how and when I spend time on that platform. And I'm conscious to be either creating something or interacting meaningfully with other creators on there. Otherwise, I'm just like not going to be on there. So these are two very positive things that have come from me reading this book, but I need to think a bit more about how I can transfer the other points to my work. And like you say, it's not really signaled so clearly.
I love that. You have just proven that the book club works, I think. Yay! I agree with you about Instagram. That's my number one doom scrolling destination. When I spend time on LinkedIn, I feel like it's productive. I get a lot out of those relationships and often the content, but on LinkedIn, or Instagram, sometimes I just feel like I need a lot more clothes and travel or something when when I scroll there.
Yeah, and that comparison never leads to good work. It just leads to us like feeling just inadequate, right? So I thought that was really powerful point that she raised. So overall, I'm really happy we read it. It was a great pick. Thank you. Thank you for suggesting the book.
Yeah, I actually read another book at the same time that's relevant to this topic. It was called The Pathless Path. The author is Paul Millard. And for people out there who might be looking for some more like direct reflective questions on how to figure out this balance, I found that a lot more useful. It is pretty unstructured, but if you are a person who likes being given a set of reflection questions, I thought it was really great for that.
And that's brilliant. I'll add that to the notes afterwards. That book, which was by Paul Millard. What was the name of it again?
The Pathless Path.
There's so many books, isn't there? So little time, so many books.
I know. The most impactful infographic I've ever seen in my life, and I have no idea what this says about me, was an infographic that told you if you lived to the average age, how many more books you would be able to read in your life if you were an average reader. I saw it about 10 years ago, and I think about it monthly still. It has changed how I read.
They say, don't they, on average, people read about 1,000 books in a lifetime. I've seen that statistic thrown around, average wise. But if you're an avid reader, that could be obviously triple. But it's a case of like choosing what to read, and spending time reading good books is what I'm most preoccupied with. All right, so shall we move on to talk about the next book we picked, which was this one? I actually have the paper version here, The Power of Moments by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. They're brothers, right?
They are. I read another book by these guys called Switch a few years ago that I still think about, and I was really excited to get my hands on this one based on how I felt about that one.
They have written a lot of very successful books. This is certainly not their first rodeo, is it? Like, they've got lots of others out there. They're very popular authors, and rightfully so. This is a brilliant book that's well structured. What I really loved about it is the fact that it's not only broken into 4 sections and talking about what makes a powerful moment, which we can go into in just a moment, but there's also a really nice summary at the end of the chapters. And there's what they call a clinic, which demonstrates a very practical example, a real contextualized example of that chapter in practice. So as a reader, I was able to dive back in and out again. I like to review things before we obviously meet for the book club. And those review pages were brilliant in jogging my memory and helping with that recall. So I really like how it's organized.
Yeah, I thought this one was definitely set up for success. I loved the organization and the flow, and I thought the content was brilliant. I can't think of anyone except perhaps like a happy hermit in a cottage in the woods who does not need to read this.
It's so applicable, isn't it? It's not just for educators, which there are really great examples of educators applying certain principles in this book. It's for everyone. If you work in customer service, if you're running a company, you have clients, there's something in here for everyone. And the examples are so varied that there'll be a moment when you'll see yourself or be able to relate to that personal example that's being shared in this book. And I really appreciate how varied they do make those examples throughout. They don't just stick to one narrative at all.
Yeah, I loved that, and I was particularly captivated by the example of the faculty professional developer who is introducing backward design to a group of new college faculty as they make their first syllabi. I thought that that was absolutely brilliant, and I thought a lot about how you and I might apply that because we both do a lot of conference speaking and
Mm-hmm.
how you can go through that experiential learning cycle in maybe like the average 60 minutes or 90 minutes of a conference session, I thought was very interesting.
With that example, was that the one where those professors were asked, where do you want your students to be in 5, 10 years' time? And then they reflected on that and then used that to reverse engineer their courses. And they realized that their course content wasn't designed in a way that supported the example was a lifelong learner of maths or somebody who's a passionate lifelong learner. They realized that the content of the courses didn't support that.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was a really powerful example. I was like, yes, I should really think about this. Like, where do I want my clients to be after the course? How do I want them to feel in terms of like as creators of media, with podcasters and video creators? What sort of tools and what does success look like for them? I think that was really powerful. I agree with that. What other points stood out for you? Because there's those 4 sections, isn't there? Like moments of elevation was one. You have to excuse me as I look at my notes. Moments of insight, moments of pride, and moments of connection. Was there any one of those that really particularly stood out for you?
As far as moments of pride, I thought a lot about what it's like to supervise employees or contractors, and also very heavily about what it's like to manage volunteers. Um, because I feel like that is a key component of volunteer recognition. And at least in the US, I don't think that we necessarily set ourselves up when we're managers or directors or even just have people volunteering for us to keep at the top of mind how important it is to just give a kind word to genuinely recognize something brilliant that someone has done. And that led me to also thinking about how important those moments are in the classroom and how a simple, hey, I noticed that when you started the class, your sentences were this long and now they're this long. That's brilliant. This is really great. You should be proud. I thought that it was something that could be applied in a lot of different contexts.
Yeah, they really pulled apart that concept of employee of the month or that end of year recognition and how negative that could be actually in achieving that all important sense of pride and appreciation, because it can often exclude people or it just feels a little bit theatrical. That's my words, not Chip and Dan Heath's words. And that example you just gave is the point they were trying to raise about recognition being regular, being authentic, being personable, and being timely. And I think those moments you can have, whether it's between a teacher or a student or a team leader and one of their team members, I think is so important. It should be part of the day-to-day kind of workings of whatever you do and not just waiting to that end of the month or end of the year point in time.
Yeah, I thought that was very powerful. I also got a lot out of the connection section.
Mm.
It made me think you and I have been delving through the various books we've read quite a bit into the idea of community. And I thought this was another facet of how you can build community around an idea, a brand, a lifestyle, or even a cause in a community. There is powerful information here about that. It's applicable to community in a classroom, working one-on-one with learners. I felt that it was universally useful.
Yeah, lots to take away from there. Is there anything in particular that you're going to apply to your own work from the chapter on connection?
I think that one of the things that I personally need to do is to take the time to make that a part of my schedule. One of the things that I've blocked off for myself this year is that every week I want to call 3 people for no specific reason, just to kind of check in and see how things are going in from my professional life, to keep things close and lively and to keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on in people's lives.
Yeah, that all important connection, hey, and just not there being any reason, no transaction, just how's it going? Yeah, I love that idea.
How about you? What are you taking away from this one?
Oh, there's a lot, isn't there, in this book? It's difficult to pick. And I'm looking through my notes, like thinking, oh, what shall I choose? Well, in the former chapters, they talk about the moments of elevation and making significant moments, like, for example, onboarding new students, onboarding new clients, in my case. They're quite significant moments, the onboarding process, and making it, elevating those moments of celebration and joy and engagement, and making those peaky moments, they call it like a peak, like a mountain peak, peakier, which I found really memorable, and doing so with a sense of kind of ceremony, ritual, and in a way that people are really excited and want to share about it. And a really good indicator that you're doing this well is when people want to like repost about their experience on social media or take photos at the event itself. Now we both work online quite a lot. So my measure of success for this on how well I'm onboarding new podcasters, for example, will be, are they talking about it in public communities? Are they excited about it? That's going to be my measure of success, and see if I'm really kind of creating that sense of celebration at the start, and also thinking about the end as well, that sense of completion when they've got their podcast up and running and launched, which is super exciting. So I love that idea of elevating moments. And the second one was about insight, which I'm not sure what you felt about this, about in your views, Rebecca, but this one was about like thinking further about things. I'm trying to look through all my notes and get the key point here, but it made me reflect on coaching questions and asking better questions to facilitate deeper reflection. That's what I took from Moments of Insight chapter, because there was those examples where people were encouraged to look at their work and assess what they were doing and assess how well they were doing things and whether they're working towards those goals through the facilitation of questioning. And that just immediately connected to skills of coaching. I'm not sure what you took from that section, if it was the same or something else.
Absolutely. I don't have training in coaching specifically, so that's not where my mind went first. My mind went to teaching and to sales. When I do new teacher observations, one of the things that I often find that I want to talk about is being a reflective practitioner. And I thought that some of these questions were helpful for that. But I also think, everybody in the world, you and I definitely has sales in some part of their life or their role. And this is a big insight, and listening is the most valuable sales skill I can think of. So to ask good questions and actually listen, I thought was a powerful reminder.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of it from sales perspective, but you're right.
I do have to say, I did my yearly review recently. I spent over 80 nights in hotels, and I wanted to copy the hotel elevation sections out of this book and send them to several of the hotels that I stayed in 2023. I wish that more people in the hospitality industry would read this book.
There was that great example of how there's this one hotel that has a hotline that you can just pick up the phone and ask for popsicles, and then they'll just arrive like a platter of popsicles, which I think is just delightful. And more hotels need to do that. Maybe not with popsicles, maybe with wine.
Yeah, very few of my 2023 hotel experiences reflected that level of thoughtfulness.
But this seems like it's a book really for all, not just for educators and entrepreneurs, right? There's just so much that people can take away. So I think it's pretty clear which one's taking pride of place this month on our shelves.
I agree. The power of moments, it's a keeper for me.
Definitely, me too. Absolutely love this book. So thanks so much you were the one that suggested it originally, and it sat on my shelf half read. I am guilty of that. You know what I'm like with books. So I'm really glad that we use this opportunity to pick this and actually really dive into it. So thanks so much for unpacking this with me. And I did enjoy Celeste Headlee's one too as well. That was perfect timing for this time of year.
Yeah, that was a great New Year's read.
So what are you reading next?
We've got 2 books coming up for the next book club. We have Feel Good Productivity, How to Do More of What Matters to You. This is by Ali Abdaal. If you are on YouTube, you have probably seen him. I love his channel. This is brand new. And we also have Company of One, Why Staying Small is the Next Big Thing for Business.
Brilliant. And thanks to Andrew Woodbury, who's a fellow podcaster, who suggested that second one, Company of One. I'm looking forward to getting into that one, and the one that you suggested, Feel Good Productivity. So we're meeting next on Thursday, the 15th of February, same time. So folk who are watching the replay of this or watching with us live, you can obviously read those books and join the conversation and add to the comments on what you thought about the books and whether one of them is going to take pride of place on your bookshelf. Super. Wow. I like this whole 2-book choice. This worked well. Like, let's stick with 2.
Yes. This way I can also still fit in my pleasure reading.
Yeah, me too. I've got a huge fiction book to read for the book club that's like 550 pages. And I was thinking, gosh, if we keep reading like 3 like large nonfiction books as well, I'm just going to be reading all the time. So 2's the magic number. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you. It works for me too.
All right then. Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks everybody for following along. Until next time, happy reading.